Hello there!
I'm Emily.
And I'm Kayla.
And we just want to talk movies
Today!
We still haven't really figured the intro out.
There's always that awkward moment right after we do the intro where we're like, how do we transition into regularness?
No, I'm like, is Kayla going to say something or should I say something?
I know! We should plan that before we start. Anyway.
So today we have a very intriguing topic. We're going to talk about religious themed horror movies.
Ta-da.
We're going to talk about, we've had a recent, not like reawakening, but just a random onslaught of religious horror movies that are really popular and doing really well.
Yeah.
So we thought we would examine the subgenre a little bit and talk about our favorite movies from the subgenre and just why it's such an interesting branch of horror and why it is a very iconic branch of horror. Probably the most iconic in a way.
Possession movies are very much popular.
Yes. So it's gonna be fun, but first,
news!
breaking news!
We should have a sting for news. Like a little... That sounds like the Batman intro. That would be really fun. I will look into that. I will.
Put that on the agenda.
Anyway, would you like to start or shall I?
You have lots of news?
Not a ton. I just have three mini newses.
Mini newses. I have one news.
Okay, you should
Singular. We finally got the trailer for A Young Woman and the Sea. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I've been waiting since it was first announced way back in, 2020?
Jeez.
And finally we have proof of its existence.
Proof of life.
Yes. And it looks so good.
Oh, good.
And Daisy looks awesome and beautiful and powerful, and we love it. And
amazing. Showstopping.
Yeah, she is the moment.
She is the moment.
Yeah, it looks really, really good. I loved the book so much, and already just watching the clips from the movie, I wanted to read the book again. I'm so excited for this. It's such a powerful, amazing, true story about this awesome woman who did this terrifying, incredible thing. I don't know why she did it, but there you go. I never would have done it, but I'm not a physical person, so I'm not about to swim across the English Channel.
Wow. Yeah. What do you get out of that? A spot in the Guinness Book of World Record?
She just was like, she loved swimming, and she was like, I want to do this. And everyone's like,
that's pretty cool.
Girl. Because all the guys, like, before her, there's a very low number of guys who did it. Maybe only, like, one. But so many people tried and, like...
failed. Did they die?
I don't think so. Pretty close.
Wow.
But yeah, it's crazy, and already, like, seeing the clips of it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's gonna be so good.
I love a good, like a sports story of that sort, where it's like, you just gotta overcome this thing. I love stuff like that. And
it's period piece. It's like the 20s,
so
that's really fun.
It's your favorite. You love the 20s.
I love the 20s. Yeah, it's going to be in select theaters May 31st, so probably not our theater.
That's pretty soon, though, May 31st.
It'd be great if I could see it in theaters, but I doubt it. But it is, like, a Disney production, so it's going to be on Disney Plus, like, pretty soon after. So
it'll be accessible.
Yes. Thank God.
At the very least.
So that's my news. I've just been over the moon with that.
Wow. Amazing. You know what other trailer we got? Joker 2.
Oh, we did.
Very interesting. The Tumblr kids are quaking. Lady Gaga is on the scene. She is amazing. Show-stopping. She literally is the one who says that. I think it looks really... What do you think? Did you watch the trailer?
I've only seen the clips of it.
Okay. They called it a teaser, which makes me angry because it's a trailer. Like, it's not a teaser.
Okay.
So I'm like, they're just going to show the whole movie, I guess, in the actual trailer.
That's why I don't watch.
I probably won't watch the full trailer. I think this will be all that I will watch. But it looks good. And she looks really good in it. Lady Gaga... Has she ever done anything that I've been like, meh? She puts her all into everything.
Even that awful season of American Horror Story she was in, she
showed
good.
up and showed out.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm excited. Especially for the, like, we didn't hear any, like, songs. Like, we know it's a musical. We didn't hear them singing any songs, but there was a lot of dancing in the trailer, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready for this to be theatrical and just awesome.
Musical theater.
And, yeah, I love that. I love that kind of stuff. And Lady Gaga's involved, so we know at least one person's gonna put their all into it.
Well, Joaquin's always good, too.
Yeah, Joaquin is great. My other news is I put down Malevolent in the Woods. Let me explain. Let me explain. So, we have some Stranger Things updates. A little while ago, one of the Duffer brothers posted a picture of him and another figure walking with their backs to the camera in what looked like a woods set in the Upside Down, because there's a bunch of vines everywhere and it's super dark and misty. Well, people assume that other figure is Mr. Finn Wolfhard because he's tall. But adding to this, Millie Bobby Brown posted on Instagram just some pictures of, like, what her life has looked like lately, and one of those pictures included her taking a picture of herself as 11, and in the background you see Upside Down Woods. So people are thinking that Mike and 11 are in the woods, in the Upside Down, and they're like, why? Well, there's lots of theories that they might have more of like a pair team up solo-ish journey together, doing some stuff,
so good.
Which I'm super excited for, and that would follow in the whole, like, we're going back to season 1, because they had a lot of scenes, like, just them in season 1. So I would be super excited about that. But either way, it looks like they might be in peril, because why would you be in the Upside Down in the woods? And also, Millie Bobby Brown had a bloody nose. A fake bloody nose, obviously, but in the picture she had a bloody nose.
She's using powers.
Yes. We also, more recently, we had the update that episode 8, the final episode of Stranger Things ever, is being written. And it's completely outlined. We don't know if they finished writing it yet, but it's definitely on its way to us. So, I'm sad. But this is going to be a momentous occasion, so I'm excited. And that's all I have for my news.
On to the topic of religious-themed horror movies. So, obviously, it's kind of self-explanatory, but religious horror movies are horror movies that have either explicit or implicit themes of religion. Usually Catholicism and Christianity, but sometimes other stuff too, especially when you get into, like, foreign horror movies. But we'll probably be mostly focusing on American films, and those have a lot to do with Christianity. So what makes this subgenre of horror work is because anytime you have religious themes, it's like the classic supernatural fears. We all fear the unknown. And that's a lot of what religion has been used for over the years, famously, is controlling people with fear.
She said it.
I mean, let's be honest. That's not the way it's supposed to be used, but the reason there's so much discourse and issues within religious areas is because of that whole fear aspect, the Catholic guilt.
Yeah, purity culture.
Yes.
My friends.
And you can get so much psychological horror from that.
Yes.
I mean, it's why The Exorcist was such a phenomenon. Because people were terrified of this kind of stuff. And back then, the 70s, when religion, I think, was a lot more structured the same. Like, pretty much everyone had the same, like, yeah, we all go to church, now it's a little more varied, and people have their own opinions.
Yeah.
But back then it was all very, like, this is what you do, and this is what you believe. So, back then, The Exorcist was basically a documentary for people, and they were like, oh, that's why I have to be, a good Christian or Catholic.
Wow. Yeah.
So, obviously, these fears of the devil and evil infiltrating us and going to hell and everything is so implemented. Even if you're not religious, you're gonna have
just like
those fears.
when you don't have control over your own body, like obviously that's a horror movie right there.
And it's interesting that in most possession movies, it is a female being possessed.
Yes, I actually read this book called The Science of Women in Horror, and it's written by Meg Halfdahl and Kelly Florence. And they basically went through a bunch of horror movies throughout film history and why women are used the way that they are. And I think it's pretty clear when it comes to religious horror that, like, if you take something that everyone societally expects is supposed to be pure and right and, like, kind and not a horror villain and make them scary, that's really scary. So, like, for example, a nun or a young girl or even a young boy in some cases, but most of the time you definitely see it with girls because there's a bit more riding on their purity in Western culture specifically.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a really interesting book. I highly recommend. If you're interested in film, horror, any and all of the above.
Feminism.
Yeah.
I think that with The Exorcist, it was all about trying to be as shocking as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And what's more shocking than a young, sweet
Mm-hmm.
little girl, like, all of a sudden doing and saying these horrible things that you don't even...
Vulgar.
Yeah, in, like, mainstream film, you wouldn't see stuff like that to that degree.
Yeah.
From a female, let alone a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just being literally the devil possessing her.
Ugh.
That's...
Pazuzu.
Yeah, Pazuzu.
Creepy looking devil, too.
Oh, yeah. Well, The Exorcist, it's literally... There's a reason it's one of the greatest horror films ever. The way it uses, like, the subtle...
Subliminal stuff.
The flashes
Yeah.
of the dude.
Mm-hmm.
Who, like, when you pause and look at him, it's really, like...
I don't know.
That's a lot of makeup on.
Yeah. it looks like it could be like a 70s glam rock star, but at the same time that makes it so creepy because it's like that's a dude right there.
Yeah, it's not a weird CG demon face like it's like just a guy in front of the camera in this weird makeup
making
like
weird faces. Yeah.
A creepy face. It's like, okay. And so when you just get a flash of it, it's like, what was that?
Yeah. So good. I like it. Isn't there a moment where it flashes over the either Reagan's face or the priest's face?
Both.
Okay.
At one point.
That part, that
he
stuff's
gets
really
possessed.
Cool. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That was a crazy release to the public. I mean, you had people passing out, throwing up in the theater, and it's so funny nowadays. You go back and watch it, like, it's disturbing and messed up, but it's pretty tame as far as today goes. And to think back then that people had this strong of a reaction just shows how much religion is implemented in society.
Even if you're not religious.
Yeah. Because it's a terrifying thought that, like, even if you don't believe in the supernatural, but what if it is real? What would you do if it was?
Yeah.
You couldn't do anything. You're helpless to it.
Yep.
Very scary stuff. And as far as religion being, like, the darkest side of things, like, with the devil and everything, and going to hell, and basically, like, if you don't want any of this to happen, well, then you better follow the rules, and you better do what you're supposed to.
Yep.
Another movie that explores this is a film called Frailty.
I was going to talk about Frailty.
Yes. That's, I mean, very explicitly is about someone, like, I was given this, I was chosen, basically, to rid the world of evil. And, you know, for the first part of the movie, it's like, well, obviously it's just some crazy person who's looking for an excuse to be a murderer, but then, no, you find out, like, all the people he murdered were pretty awful.
Yeah.
So it's like, but then you ask, so awful enough to justify killing them? And, like, who, like, it becomes, okay, I'm gonna kill awful people, but what's the definition of that's bad enough to be killed?
Who gets to decide which human life should be taken?
Yeah, that's another interesting part of religion. Like, when is the sin so great that, like, you're never gonna be forgiven, and when is it okay, you can be forgiven? Everyone has different opinions on that.
Yeah.
Some people like anything you can be forgiven.
Yeah.
And some people like, no, there are some things that just God will never forgive you.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think another concept that comes up that's kind of connected to that is characters who have God complexes, like Victor Frankenstein, or not Victor Frankenstein. Is his name Victor Frankenstein in the first one? Or Henry?
It's Henry
Technically,
Frankenstein.
in the book, it's Victor.
Yes.
But it's Henry in the movie.
I don't know why they changed it.
Yeah, that's weird.
But
Frankenstein. Dr.
Frankenstein.
Some people think that they have the right to decide when life should be taken out of this world and when it should be put into this world. And that's super scary.
Yeah.
Because no one should have that amount of power, and when people think that they do, that usually leads to some very corrupt things going on. And monsters being created that terrorize cities.
Yep. And that's also where they talk about, like, religion and science crossing. What happens when science becomes... Because science just gets more and more advanced. Like, it won't just... Like, okay, we reached the top and that's it. It's just going to keep going. So when does it become enough to give humans the power of God, essentially?
Like, we become the paranormal.
Yeah. And obviously, you know, back in the day especially, it was like, yeah, that's bad. You're not God. You cannot have that power. And if...
Nowadays, we've kind of gone past that.
Yeah.
Where we kind of can be, in a way.
I mean, people used to think that when you said the Earth was round, that was against... Like, you got killed for that.
When we said that the world didn't revolve around the Earth, that the Earth revolved around the sun.
Yep. You got killed for that. And obviously nowadays we're like, oh my God. So what, you know, centuries from now, what are people going to look back on and be like, oh my God, like, they thought bringing life to the dead was going to be that bad? That's kind of insane.
Now we just do that every day.
Yeah. I mean, really, like, if you think about it, it feels very Black Mirror, but...
Yeah, it could be possible.
AI with getting more advanced, like, every second.
We can technically bring people back from the dead with AI.
Yeah.
Like, recreating people's voices and likeness. Creepy.
Yeah, it's weird to think, because obviously now it's so bizarre, and we're, like, uncomfortable with it. And my opinion right now as well is, like, no, let's not do that. But who knows? Maybe
it will
aeons
become
from
normal.
now, it's like, they were so not forward-thinking.
Yeah, maybe.
It's hard to know whether you're going to be on... If we all knew what the right side of history was, we wouldn't have a problem, but...
Yeah, there would be no wars.
Yeah. We never know. That's the scary part, and I think what religious horror movies explores is, like... It's kind of... It's funny, because it feels like they're meant for people who are religious.
Yeah.
Again, to, like, scare them. Be like... Oh God, yeah, this is why I have to follow what I believe, but it's almost like religious horror films are made for non-religious people.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, okay, you don't believe in all this stuff, but while you sit for this hour and a half, like, imagine if it was. You're not prepared, you don't know what to do or what you're getting into.
Yeah, I don't know how to pray.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of, I feel like there's a lot of old movies from, like, the 60s, like, the cheap monster movies or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And there was always like the main character was the non-believer, and he's like, well, I don't believe in all that stuff. But then when the supernatural would happen, he'd be like trying to follow. He's like, okay, I got the cross, and then the monster would be like, well, that doesn't work. You don't believe.
Yeah, you have to believe. Interesting.
So it feels like they're catered towards people who are not religious.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, obviously, everyone is scared of them, like, according to what happened with The Exorcist. But it's more... Because usually that's what the story is about. It's not about people who, like, are 100% like, yeah... We knew this was gonna happen, so we know how to handle it. It's even if the people are religious, there's usually like maybe they're questioning their faith.
Yeah,
or
in The Exorcist for sure.
Yeah,
I love his character. What is his name?
Damien.
His name's Damien. That's funny. Is he
Damien
grown up
Karras?
Damien from The Omen?
He might be.
But yeah, he's a really interesting character because he's fully a priest, but I think it kind of brings in a more general audience to have a character who's not fully like God is key, and you just watch him like fully embrace it more and more until he sacrifices himself.
And I think that very much is them holding a mirror up to society. I mean, like, people, they knew that as much as everyone pretended, like, anyone who's religious, they, no question, they believe everything and it's all good. Like, not everyone is gonna believe. They're gonna have their doubts,
questions,
especially when horrible things happen in their lives, like a family member dying. They're gonna be like, well, this didn't really, like, I thought everything was gonna be okay, but I don't feel okay, so maybe I don't believe in God. So it's very much like trying to bring the audience into that world. I mean, like, well, you can pretend that, like, everything's okay, and as long as you do what you do, then nothing will happen. But, like, bad things are going to happen either way.
Yep.
Because religious people, non-religious people, they all get killed by the demons.
Yeah, so. That's true. Yeah, it doesn't fully protect you.
Yeah. It's interesting.
It is.
And so, obviously, another iconic movie of the time was the Amityville Horror. Which had a lot of religious themes. And what's interesting about that one, again, there's a scene where the priest, like, comes to bless their new house. And he, right off the bat, is like, oh, no, this isn't good. Doesn't he, like,
die?
Yeah, well, there's, like, the thing with the flies at first, and then he's driving home, the car goes crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And he goes back to the church, and he's telling, like, his superiors about all of this, and they don't believe him. They're like, it's not the devil, it's just a coincidence.
Yeah.
And that's crazy. These are, like, the superior, like, the
people who preach all this stuff.
Yes. And so when someone's like, oh, I think this is real, they're like, no, come on, man.
It can't be real.
So
it's when you think, it could never happen to me.
Exactly.
But it does.
I think that was really interesting as well, especially for that time.
Yeah.
It was saying, like, no one is, as much as they say that they're prepared and everything for the Antichrist or whatever, no one's, people really, do they really believe?
Yeah.
Because when things start happening,
when it comes down to it,
we can all be like, chalk it up to, there's rational explanation. So I always thought that was a really interesting part of that film. Of course, The Omen. We gotta talk about The Omen.
Great film.
Not a little girl, but a little boy, who is literally the Antichrist. And I think it's weird because they're kind of saying, like, evil can be everywhere, right? Yeah. And this sweet little innocent little baby boy who, like, literally doesn't know that he's the Antichrist. He doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
But he is, and people die around him. So it's like, you gonna kill this little boy and save the world, or just let it go? And obviously, we know what happened.
This movie.
But again, that was another, for the time, around like when The Exorcist came out, this stuff was like people actually thought this was real, and so it was like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
the Antichrist, we just dealt with the demonic possession.
Mm-hmm.
Now literally the devil is coming to take over the world.
So yeah, that even goes more into like the religious people being behind the whole thing.
Yeah, that's very interesting, especially when you get into the prequel.
The prequel was really interesting. The whole reason that they're doing it is to get more people to go to the church, just giving them actually something to fear, because they themselves are like admitting, oh, it's all this stuff we're saying, it's not really real, it's not really happening, so we have to create it ourselves so that we have a business. We have to create the problem so we can fix it.
I forget what the saying is. You create a problem so that everyone will come and buy your solution.
Yeah, that's literally like good business tactic, I guess.
Yeah, that's another one. It holds a mirror up and is
definitely.
Like, so this is what religion is. I mean, this isn't a controversial thing to say. It's what religion has been used
business.
For. It's used to rule people with fear and to control them. And you have the actual, like, people with a conscience and a brain in their head saying, like, that's not what
it should be.
Faith is about. That's not what Christianity or Catholicism or any religion is meant for. It's literally meant to be a better person to people. But it's just so easy to use as something to make people afraid and therefore control them.
Especially when you have like such an institution, like especially since it was set in Rome. Like they're a full-on, like they're a business. Like it's not about religion anymore, it's about keeping the system alive.
Yeah.
Which very much can be very harmful and has been harmful throughout time.
To the point where literally the movie is saying these people will birth the Antichrist if it gets them the control that they want.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And kill an innocent baby.
Yeah, they'll kill
multiple innocent babies.
There's a lot of stuff in the original Omen and the prequel, obviously, but in the original that's like insanely dark and twisted and like stuff is so uncomfortable you don't want to think about.
Yeah.
But that movie was like,
they go into it. Yeah.
It's like, oh gosh. Okay. But speaking of stuff related to that, a couple years earlier in 1968, we had Rosemary's Baby, which was another classic.
Yeah.
It didn't get, I don't think it didn't get the reaction The Exorcist had, but it's still, you know, people, women especially, were very freaked out.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have a movie, I mean, this was the late 60s, so you started to see, like, more stuff in film that you didn't see before. But there hadn't been a movie, a horror film, about pregnancy and, like, just the whole process of giving birth and all that stuff. Because no one cared to make it. But this, I mean, for a woman, is just a sickening idea.
That's the ultimate, as we were talking about, like, the bad, obviously, this is not all religion, and I don't want to get overly political, but the ultimate act of, like, controlling people is being able to control your body, which is a lot of times churches have been known to try and do that, especially to women. And to me, that is just, like, one of the scariest type of horrors to see on film, for sure. In Rosemary's Baby and the newest, in the Omen prequel, it's just so uncomfortable, and you can, like, feel it in your bones how awful it is.
It feels so much, it reminds me of the movie Mother with Jennifer Lawrence, which I think took a lot from this movie.
For sure.
But it's more, like, less about what you see on screen. Not with Mother, you see everything on screen with Mother, but Rosemary's Baby, it's more the psychological aspect. There's a lot of just quiet moments with her in the house, and you just feel like she's with her husband, who's supposed to be like
The protector.
the one she trusts the most, and you, like, we the audience know, like, no, something's up. And these neighbors start coming, and it just feels like a bad dream.
Yeah, it
you're like,
so
no,
does.
Can you go away, please? And why is the husband acting like this? Like, just bizarre.
She has no one.
She knows something's wrong, but what can she do?
Yeah,
because everyone's around like, no, calm down.
Gaslighting.
You're pregnant. Yeah, exactly. It's
another thing that is common in religion.
Yeah, it's terrifying. And then come to find out, like, all these people, these strangers at first, who were like her neighbors, were all in on this plan to have her birth the devil.
It's so scary.
And then, of course, she's a similar thing with the Omen. She's like, well, the devil, like, I gotta kill him, but then it's her baby. It's a part of her. How could she kill him? Oh, yeah.
So awful. I could go on and on and on.
Yeah. It's a very bizarre, interesting film.
I watched that movie when I had my wisdom teeth out, and it added to the discomfort.
And then another movie we have a little more recent is The Witch.
I was gonna bring that up too.
That also has, again,
like guilt.
Yep, the guilting the ladies.
She is blamed for everything.
Literally
that
everything.
happens, especially when it's the men who are doing the bad things.
It's we had a whole lesson on this in my sophomore year of high school about this period in time and the, what are they called, the Puritans? Yeah. Basically, if you were a teenage girl, everyone hated you. Just
looking at you is like, oh, she's sinning.
Yeah, pretty much. And again, because people are taught so much to fear the witches that come to eat your babies and everything, so it's like...
And of course the witches are female figures.
Yes. And a lot of the time, in that time period, it's so funny, but the teenage girls would pretend that they were witches and they, like, do witchy things because they were so bored.
Yeah, it's true. That's how...
I loved that.
Part of how the Salem witch trials started, like, part of the stuff that they brought up in the trial, no one knows if this is actually true, but a group of the girls who were supposedly, like, bewitched, I believe, were, like, they would get together as a group and, like, try to predict the future with, like, a glass ball or something like that. And so they're like, well, of course you got bewitched. You've been dealing with the devil's magic.
Yep.
And I'm sure if they did that, they just did it because they had nothing else to do.
Hilarious. And it's so funny because, like, it becomes the point where the teenagers have more brains than all the adults.
Yeah.
If these teenage girls could fool an entire
I
village
know.
just by being like, oh, guess what? I cast a spell today.
It's crazy. It's so crazy. And supposedly, like, I've read a lot of books about this. Supposedly a lot of it is orchestrated by, like, their dads and stuff like that because of, like, family feuds and stuff. But still, it's hilarious. Obviously it wasn't hilarious at the time, but it's crazy that it's all just delusion.
Yeah,
all of it was delusion. What gave you the confidence? Delusion.
They didn't have iPhones back then. They didn't know what to do with
Yeah.
their time.
They just wanted to point the finger.
I think The Witch has, like, one of the most satisfying endings for a movie like that. Because, like, it becomes a point, you start off, like, terrified, because it's a very creepy movie with this witch in the woods and everything, but as you spend time with this family...
Yeah. Just hate the family.
It becomes, like, I want so bad to see this girl just be like, you know what? I'm evil now.
Yeah.
Because it's better than living with these people.
I love that the ending shot of her just, like, laughing is, like, so freeing. It's, like, cathartic to watch. It's like, yes, you, girl.
And to compare it with another film, Midsommar, which people say that ending is, like, satisfying as well.
That's not...
That has a completely different vibe. So we get into more, like, cult-like territory. And people essentially, with this film, which is very scary, audiences were tricked by the cult themselves.
Yeah.
Because they watch the end once our main character is completely brainwashed. And they're like, yeah, good for her. It's like, oh, okay, so...
So you're susceptible to being initiated into a cult?
Because the point is, like, obviously they see it as girl power. Her...
But she doesn't have agency in it at all. No. I mean, I haven't seen the film. I've seen, like, parts of it, and I know what happens, but I don't see a part where she ever has agency in it.
No. It's basically her kind of, you know, she's in a very vulnerable spot because her family just died, and so she doesn't know what's going on. Then these people are like, oh, we'll take care of you. Come hang out with us. And she's just kind of like... She thinks it's all good because they're dancing, and they make her the queen, of course, of the dance. They're like, you're so great.
Give her validation.
Yeah. And then they're like, oh, and you know what? Your boyfriend is wanting to break up with you or neglecting you. Well, we'll kill him for you. How's that? And she's like, yeah. And everyone else like,
it's right so weird.
On. I'm like, okay, listen, her friends. I don't think they were her friends or the boyfriends. College people.
Yeah.
Like, they were all, like, annoying and weird and not nice to her. And the boyfriend, like... It's weird because he wants to break up with her, but he also knows she's in a weird spot, so he doesn't want to do it. Which... He's so, like, vilified for that. And I'm kind of like, I get it, because, like, you gotta just do it at some point. But at the same time, like, he's trying not to be...
Yeah. It's not like he's the worst person in the world.
Everyone just hates him like he freaking
doesn't he
murdered
does
her.
He cheat on her at one point?
No, well, there's an assault scene where he's like drugged.
Oh.
And people said, well, see, he cheated on her. I'm like...
People watched the movie and were like, yeah, he cheated on her. Wow. That's crazy.
It's very concerning, the reactions to this movie, which is part of why I don't like the movie. Because I'm like, it does feel like the movie is trying to say that. I'm like, I really don't like that.
But maybe that's the point.
Yeah, but then I think that too. I'm like, are they trying to like trick?
They're trying to show the audience, look, you're falling for it too.
Yeah, it's a movie that's, the only thing that creeps me out about it is how everyone reacted to it. But as far as cults go, a similar movie is called The Sacrament, which is like a found footage type of thing about this guy whose sister, she is moved and joined like this community out in the middle of nowhere, and she asked them to, she's like, look how great it's essentially a cult. And she's, you know, she seems like everything's all good, and there's I forget what they call the guy, like Father Jones or something. He's like the leader, and he's like, yeah, we're all good here, we're all family, blah blah blah. And, you know, you get the, like, I think we should go. And then, of course, at the end of the movie, you have him giving everyone, like, the poison drink. And he's like, let's all drink. And,
oh, God.
And then they all die.
And that has happened in real life multiple times.
That is a very real thing that happens. So, and again, it's the controlling people, making... less with fear and more just with, like, it's even more terrifying because they're, like, trying to do it with comfort. They're like, you just come hang out with us. You don't have to do anything. We'll just hang out and chill. It's like, it'd be so easy to fall into that, obviously.
So true.
Because, like, you don't look at people like that. You can look at someone who's, like, yelling, like, you're all sinners and you're all going to hell, and you could be like,
Yeah, it's more out there.
Yeah.
That's probably the difference between religion and cult. That's like the line. Like, cults don't fully admit what they are.
Yeah.
But religion as well, but you kind of can tell.
Because religion can do the same thing, I guess, with the church being like all welcoming, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, there's a fine line. Like, as you get deeper and deeper into religion, there are certain religions where it's like towing the line as just a cult. It's very interesting to think about, like, what makes it any different. I guess the amount of control that they have over you, which we just talked about in a lot of cases. They have a lot of control over you, religion, but hopefully not all of them.
You also have, like, the Wicker Man, I guess, would fall into that as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much about a cult who everything seems all fine and dandy till you find out they're sacrificing people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a freaky idea for me. Because, again, we have the cliche picture of everyone, like, with the flower crowns.
Yeah.
And, we dance around, like, oh, that's a cult. But it doesn't always look like that in real life.
No.
Another interesting one is Children of the Corn. Again, with, like, this sweet, innocent kids. Yeah. What could ever be wrong with
kids
them?
in horror, man. They go hand in hand.
But
babies.
Yes. What makes that one interesting is essentially why the kids all get together and form their own little cult is because they fear this entity more than the adults.
Okay.
They all, it's almost suggesting that it's like the parents, like, okay, yeah, they know the stories, but they know it's not real. But the kids are all like, what? There's an entity in the corn maze? Like, oh my god, we gotta make sure that he's satisfied and he doesn't. So then they all kill the adults.
Wow.
So that's really interesting to think about. Because, of course, like, when you hear stories like that as a kid,
you believe it 100%.
Yeah. And that essentially is why that from that young age and up, that's when the control starts and you don't know any different. Which
you think that's just how the world is.
Yeah. And it's just interesting to have the kids being in control, not because, I guess you can interpret it different ways, but usually the person who's, like, in control and trying to make everyone afraid, like, knows that it's all crap. But it's almost like these kids,
they don't.
They do believe. So what they're trying to do is, like, save everyone.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's, like, psychopaths in there.
Yeah.
But it still suggests that it's not that they're just doing it just to do it. They're like, no, they believe that...
They believe in something.
This thing is real. And, of course, obviously, we find out it is real in the movie. We also have Hellraiser.
Oh, boy.
Very... lots of religious themes in that.
Hell.
It's pretty much like everything the opposite side.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like
fearing.
Anything like sexual, the temptation of the flesh.
Yeah.
It's all that stuff.
That is what are they called? The Cenobites love.
Yeah, people kind of like, well, you don't want to say it outright, but it's like fetishes and sex related stuff. And it's basically like, yeah, if you're into all that twisted stuff, then
you're going to hell.
You get ready to go to hell and have to do it forever.
Yeah.
Which obviously, I don't think people in the horror community are pretty smart, so they don't take it like
they're like an admonishment or whatever.
You could say it's kind of harmful to the BDSM community.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're all Satanists and you all want to just torture people.
Yeah.
But, the horror community knows, like, it's just a movie.
Yeah.
But that's essentially the theme of it, like, we're all kind of curious about what's on the other side. So that's why with this box, it's like, do you want to
how far we can push the limit.
Exactly. It's like, oh, you're into pleasure? Well, do you want to go a little further or open this box? Okay, but you take that one step and it's like, you're locked in. I'm a huge Hellraiser fan. It's just all the twistedness of it. It's so good.
It's creepy.
Yeah. The effects obviously are amazing.
Very good effects, for sure.
And again, you never saw something that blatant before in movies. It's like...
Yeah, they were very... When I went into it, I knew what it was about, but I think I watched the second one first. But when I went into it, I was like, they're not going to be... It's going to be more symbolism than, like, they're not going to be clear about it. Oh, they're pretty clear about what it's about.
Yeah. It's straight up just like... You like sex?
You like sex?
How about freaky sex?
May I interest you?
Yeah, and just like the bizarre like design of everything and like how far they push. Like you think, okay, like literally ripping people's skin off. Like how much would they be able to show?
They do it. They do it all.
Yeah, it's kind of, I think of it kind of like as the goth edgy version of like a typical possession religious horror movie. Because it's like, no, you want to like really get into it? Well, how about this?
And we have needles sticking out of our heads.
Yes. Which is so funny. I mean, obviously so much of it is just crazy and like no human would ever be able to do. But it is based in a lot of real fetishes. Yeah, which is it's interesting. But anyway, Pinhead is like one of the most thirsted after horror villains, which is hilarious.
Yeah. Yes.
And speaking of one of the most thirsted after horror villains, I want to talk a bit about Nightmare on Elm Street.
Freddy Krueger.
It's crazy how many people have a crush on him. It's kind of weird. It's like, you know, he's like a child murderer.
I know, that's weird. And he's just like a little creepy guy.
Yeah. People are into that, I guess.
I guess so.
But you have a lot of religious themes in the concept as a whole, but especially the first movie. It's literally supposed to be your worst fears.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. And there's a lot, of course, you have like the "now I lay me down to sleep," which is very much what it feels the whole movie is based off of, that prayer. And I mean, that was a big part of people's fear, I think, is when they go to sleep.
Again, lack of agency.
Yes.
You can't control what happens in your brain when you go to sleep.
That's the scariest thing. And it almost feels like, because you can't control what you dream, like you could dream about like not good stuff. We've all dreamed that we've done horrible things and we do horrible things in our dreams. So it's kind of like when you sin in your dream,
is it
does that
real?
count?
Yeah. We were talking about that in dream scenario.
Oh my gosh.
We could add that onto this list.
I didn't have any Nick Cage dreams last night. I thought I would, but I didn't.
Darn. I've never seen Nick Cage in my dreams.
No, not that I can remember. I probably have.
He's probably been in there at some point.
But Freddy Krueger, you know, very devil-like.
Yeah,
creature.
they go in the third one, he's born out of his mother was a nun who got raped by like multiple people. So he's sort of like the Antichrist in a way. It sort of goes back to what was happening in the Omen prequel, like the way that they're conceived. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's because the theme seems to be like, what's the purest person ever? Well, a nun would be.
Yeah.
Well, so how about a nun, but then something horrific also? Yeah. It's like the combination.
Ugh.
Which, yeah, that's insane. It also is very much, I forget what the exact phrase is, but the sins of the father...
It will be something by the sun. Visited upon the sun. Will
something
be
like
visited
that.
upon the sun. Ah, we're so bad.
I didn't go to catechism, I'm sorry.
No, me either.
But that's the story. It's the parents' sin, and now he is making the children pay for it.
Yes. So it's all religious themes in there.
Yeah, and that, I mean,
and again, we go back to like the final girl idea. The final girl is supposed to be the purest of the friend group. It sort of like meets at the perfect summit with like religious horror having to do with violating the young woman, and a slasher film, the main character is supposed to be the pure young woman. Yep. So it's a very good movie.
Yeah. And that, I mean, that ties essentially all of horror together. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a horror movie that doesn't have religious themes.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you could go, whether it's monster movies back in the day.
Vampires.
Yes.
Werewolves.
Anything supernatural probably comes from something in the Bible somewhere.
Or like folk tales that like served as religion way back in the day.
Yep. And you have like when it comes to foreign movies as well, that's their version of the supernatural from beliefs that have been in that culture. So it's all anything. I think it's so funny. Anything we fear, because that's what horror is about. It's what our greatest fears are. Is all tied to religion in some way.
That's so true. Ugh.
It's monsters. It's possession. It's
bad things happening.
Yeah, the dark side of life.
Yeah.
Getting brainwashed. The cult aspect. The female being, you better stay pure or else.
Or just anyone. You better not sin or else.
Yeah, that brings us, of course, to Carrie. Where
this one's very overtly religious.
Yes. Very... I mean, it's kind of weird because it goes, like, both ways, almost. Because she embraces the darkness, obviously.
Yes.
The sin, or whatever. And kills all these people that we're not too sad to see go. As, like, the audience watching this film. Obviously, we don't want high school kids to die in real life, but just from the film standpoint, like, oh, these people suck, so we want to see them die. So it's like a heroic moment. And I don't think anyone watches that movie and is like, oh, that's sad, she ended up going dark. Like, we're all like, finally.
She went dark.
It's like The Witch, you know, it's not. And that's even more surprising because that was from the 70s.
Yeah.
Very much in that more religious time. And I think everyone was just relieved when she finally snaps and got all these people and wasn't letting anyone push her around anymore. Not even her own mother.
Yep.
Which, of course, we got the Jesus symbolism with her mother.
Yeah, it literally dies in the same position. Yeah.
Which then kind of turns back to, okay, are they saying, like, because Mom tried to stop it, but then she sacrificed herself to try to stop the evil.
They say in the book that well, I guess it does happen in the movie technically as well. She makes stones rain down on, I can't remember if it's like the neighbor's backyard or their backyard.
When she was a little girl.
Yeah.
That was the neighbor. I think.
Neighbor. So, like, she's automatically connected to the devil. Also, was she born out of wedlock?
Yeah.
She was born out of wedlock. So, I don't know if you're supposed to be on the side of... Yeah, it's interesting. Because the mom is just trying to, like, protect the world from evil, supposedly.
And that's why I think it's kind of saying like, the whole idea of who's right and who's wrong, who's the good person, who's the bad person, is kind of just either way. Or
you could take it the way I take it, which is just that the mom is mentally ill. And, like, she made up that story about the stones. She is just super guilty because she had sex out of wedlock.
It happens at the end, though.
Yes.
She literally drags the house to hell.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But that could also be a case of, what is the sociology term? Not confirmation bias.
Oh, the self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, where she's like, okay, I'm angry. I'm going to do, oh yeah, my mom said I did this, so I'm going to do this.
Yeah, that's a good point, too.
That also, like, just in the case of her going evil, she's been told throughout the whole movie,
evil,
you're bad, you're wrong. Like, what do you think?
She sees herself drenched in blood, which supposedly blood is the sin that women must endure. Then that's what makes her snap. I love the self-fulfilling prophecy.
I know. It's so true. Like, same with The Witch. It's the same situation in that
Yep.
movie.
It's true literally in our everyday lives.
Mm-hmm.
That we so much that we don't even realize it, I feel like.
Yeah.
And yeah, definitely after you pointed that out, I'm like, yeah, all the movies about like the female character supposedly going dark, but
Yeah.
really just like an
Yeah.
allegory of her taking control of her life.
Yeah.
It's the self-fulfilling prophecy.
You tell someone
you're evil.
Yeah. You tell someone that they're evil, they may just act out.
Yeah. Interesting.
I have one more thing to bring up.
Oh, yes.
Stranger Things.
Oh, yeah, Stranger Things.
We missed one. We also didn't talk about The Conjuring.
Oh, yeah, The Conjuring.
The Conjuring just falls into another, like, possession story.
Yeah. Again, female.
Mm-hmm.
The mother trying to kill her kids.
Yes, that's a big thing in horror.
Yep. And you have...
Goes back to ancient Greece, Medea. The bad woman.
The bad woman. And you get, like, a similar theme with The Exorcist, where, like, when you're united in your belief, that will conquer evil.
Mm-hmm. It has a very similar third act as The Exorcist.
Which is nice because, you know, as much as we critique religion, I like that people have faith and that they use their beliefs to actually try to be a good person.
And have a community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to see that represented in films, too. Like, not always... like, ooh,
religion
the
is scary
creepy
and
Catholic
bad.
people.
Yeah.
Like, no, there's some badass ones too.
Yes.
Like Ed and Lorraine, my favorite horror movie couple.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love them. Anyway, on to Stranger
Things.
There is a lot of comparisons that you could make to, like, just the story of the Bible and Stranger Things. Someone literally wrote a book about this, and, like, I don't know how much it, like, makes sense because I haven't read it, but, like, in the description they're sort of, like, suggesting that the second coming of Jesus is happening and Stranger Things is the first sign. I'm like, oh, wow. So someone definitely took it that way, and I took it that way in some cases. I would say just the character of 11, she's Carrie, basically. She's another remake of Carrie. And the same things apply to her, where people are scared of her. She's locked away and told that she can't do things and that she can't be a normal girl. Well, what do you think is going to happen? She's not going to act like a normal girl. She's going to attack you and lash out.
Yep.
But more on the, like, we also have possession stuff. We have Will gets possessed by the Mind Flare, aka Vecna, actually, with the retconning that they did in season 4.
A little boy this time.
A little
not
boy.
A little girl.
Also, there's stuff there about, like, guilt, because we know now, and we knew from the beginning, that Will is a gay character. And obviously he grew up in the 80s, so there's guilt with that. He also has a lot of trauma with his family situation. And after what happened to him in season 1, most obviously, he's got a lot of trauma associated with that. So a vulnerable young boy gets possessed. What's new? Then we could talk about season 3 too, because there's possession in season 3. We have Billy, an older... What's interesting about Billy is he is sort of the opposite of who you would normally see getting possessed in movies.
Yep.
He's like the strong guy. He's a dude, and he's a jerk. Yep. He's not innocent by any means. But his possession sort of works to, like, bring out his own innocence, which is interesting. It kind of works the opposite way. Again, another vulnerable character, though, because he has a lot of trauma himself. I feel like that's, like, the main thing with Stranger Things. You got trauma, you better not be in Hawkins, because something icky's gonna get you.
Yep.
Season 4 is a great example of this, and that also goes with guilt, because every single person who gets Vecna'd is dealing with a certain level of guilt. We have Max. She thinks Billy's death is her fault. We've got the guy who hit and killed another kid. Obviously, there's guilt there. Who else have we got? We got Chrissy. She has an awful home life, is dealing with an eating disorder. Just lots of bad things going on in these people's lives. And Vecna preys on that. He's very much a Freddy Krueger character, where he preys on your fears, takes control of your body, literally.
Or a cult leader.
Yeah. He has a following of bats and Temadogs, many things. He literally manipulates the Upside Down into his own domain. Anything you would like to add?
Just kind of what you said, the same idea. If you have trauma or vulnerabilities, that's the danger. That's when you're most susceptible to this evil.
Yeah.
Because you essentially are easy, like, it's easy to make someone more afraid, who's more vulnerable. And obviously, in real life, sometimes killing people, but instead of killing people, it's usually just, like, brainwashing them and controlling them. Which,
But technically, that's kind of what he does, because he, like, takes their essence. He, like, takes their souls
yeah,
away
that's
from them.
definitely what the symbolism is of it, I feel. So yeah, I think
he's like just one big allegory for mental illness.
which pretty much
He sucks.
he sucks.
He kind of does have a point in his monologue, though, where he's like, I just want to make my own world where I don't have to be subject to other people's rulings. He's a cult leader. Yeah, he just didn't want to work a 9 to 5. We all can relate.
Before we wrap up, just to tie it all home, we've had 3 movies come out recently that are very much in the religious horror subgenre. We had The First Omen, which is really, as we said, like the sixth.
The Sixth Omen.
We had Late Night with the Devil.
That's another one.
That is another one.
Where a woman's agency is taken away because he makes bad deals to get famous, and his wife ends up dying.
Yep. Man sacrificed the woman so the man can have the glory.
Yep.
And then we had Immaculate, which we haven't seen.
I heard that it's very disturbing, but
Yes.
I do hear that about a lot of movies, and I'm like,
Yeah, I heard that about bones and all, and I'm like, disturbing what? But maybe I'm desensitized, I don't know. But all 3 of these movies did very, very well, financially and critically. So that's very interesting. And they were all released around Easter, which is really
that's
funny,
really
too.
funny. The second coming of Christ.
It's the second coming of the Antichrist, I think. Yeah, so that's definitely not to compare it to the 70s, where, like, those films are cemented in history. But it's kind of like, it's weird, like, this little flurry that happened. Not only that they all came out around the same time, but that they did so well.
Yeah. Interesting.
So that's very curious.
Maybe we're just at a time in life where people are like, religion.
Well, yeah, to be fair, a woman's body
Yes.
autonomy is a very hot topic right now, so that probably has a lot to do with it.
I feel like The Exorcist was trying to do something with that. The Exorcist Believer, the new Exorcist.
Yeah.
And they didn't succeed.
No.
It didn't really go anywhere. I don't know what they were doing in that movie.
I don't think they knew what they were doing. And just to briefly mention something really quick, the movie The Passion of the Christ. Not everyone regards this as basically a horror movie, and it's
Really?
not. It's just about, like, the crucifixion and all that. But what happens is so horrific, and so, like, the violence on screen is some of the most violence in cinema. And again, it's a movie about a religious tale, about the Bible tale of Jesus Christ, and it's just so funny to me that it's one of the most violent movies in cinema.
Yeah.
And I think that's really telling of why horror so easily
Goes with religion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because even when you have a non-horror movie, that's
What
a religious
every
movie.
story I've ever heard from the Bible, I'm like, That would traumatize me if I
Yeah.
read that as a child.
Yeah. I can't imagine.
It's fear. It's all fear.
But yeah, that was just something I wanted to point out because I think that's interesting. But that concludes this episode.
Yes.
Our next episode, we are going to get ready for the new Planet of the Apes movie.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to talk about the recent trilogy and probably make some predictions for this new movie coming out.
All right.
Until then,
Do we have anything that we watched recently?
Oh, yeah. We watched Dream Scenario.
Oh, yeah, I guess we talked about that. We watched 17 again, too.
Oh,
We've seen that
17
before.
again. Yeah, we haven't gone to the movies since our recent burst of going to the movies.
Yeah.
Because we didn't want to be around the crazy parade that's at the movie theater right now.
We're
staying away.
A town parade at the moment that happens very close to our town movie theater, so...
Yeah, we stayed away this weekend. But we're probably going to see Abigail soon.
Oh, yeah. Another little girl horror.
Uh-huh.
It all stems
A
from...
vampire.
Yep, a vampire.
So I guess you could count that as another kind of religious movie that came out.
I guess we might add to it in the next episode once we've seen it.
Yep. So,
well, I thought that was a very interesting discussion.
yeah, we got pretty deep this episode.
Pat ourselves on the back, because we usually are not very deep.
I think we got deep. I don't know.
Who knows?
Maybe people disagree. If you want to listen to us even more, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel to keep up with our new episodes. Or you could subscribe to us on Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify. We got tons of places. You can click our link tree in our social media and see all of our...
Find us?
Where we at.
Find where we at.
Follow us on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram so you can be up to date on all the news of when our newest episodes are coming out and what they're about. And just get, like, fun little stuff, fun little clips from the show that you can revisit. And we are at We Just Want to Talk Movies on all of those platforms. And that's going to be it today.
And we'll catch you on the flick side.